Yo, Henry! We have made a video showing whether your ideas from Walden have actually held up in modern society.
Or not.
We're going to talk about your chapters, Visitors in Solitude. Please enjoy the video.
Thank you.
I bet you're wondering, after 1.5 centuries of being dead, how your book Walden and Civil Disobedience is doing, along with how your philosophies are holding inside of them. Now, you, in Solitude, like to express the idea that some people, most likely you, find solitude warming and welcoming instead of lonely and sad. Well, people still feel that way. Your philosophies are still holding up. People still like to be alone. Now, in Solitude you write, I find it wholesome to be alone the greater part of the time. To be in company, even with the best, is soon wearisome and dissipating. I love to be alone. I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude. Now, before we continue, I'd like to show you this. This is called Instagram, something we've made while you were gone. Now, in Instagram, you can post what you like to do or your hobbies, and under hashtags, you can file them under certain categories, and people can search these hashtags and browse what you like to do. So, under the hashtags solo camping, solo trip, solo traveler, and solo travel, there is a combined of over 10 million posts. Over 10 million people like to be alone when traveling or camping. Isn't that a great way to just be alone and away from everyone you know? That way, people can practice solitude and they really like it. Also, in page 108, you also say, we are the subjects of an experiment which is not a little interesting to me. Can we not do without the society of our gossips a little while under these circumstances? Have we our own thoughts to cheer us? You write this, and people still cheer themselves up with their own thoughts. Meditating. Now, when you were gone, we started meditating. I don't know if you were there for that, actually. But under certain meditating hashtags, there is a combined of over 5 million posts there. 5 million people alone with their thoughts. They're just sitting there. They don't have anything to distract them. No people around. And they're just meditating. Isn't that what being alone is? And everyone under these hashtags finds solitude rather wholesome. And I'm just happy to say that your philosophies under solitude, they're still holding up and people are still practicing them.
Yo, Henry, your ideas about solitude are not relevant today. Your quote on page 109 of Walden states, I have never found the companion that is so companionable as solitude. The way I interpret this quote is it's your way of telling us that solitude was never something that made you lonely or unhappy. You also stated on page 106, I have never felt lonesome or in the least oppressed by a sense of solitude. In modern society, people just don't experience a sense of solitude and they wouldn't feel comfortable doing so. Today, 81% of Americans own a smartphone and spend 5.1 hours on it. Also, 70 to 80% of Americans' time awake is spent communicating. 9% writing, 16% reading, 30% speaking, and 45% listening. Back in the 1840s, before any long-distance communication, people were more adapted to being alone because they couldn't communicate nearly as easily. There were no options for communication other than writing and speaking. With less people, there was also more room for people in the 1840s to spread out. And they would also avoid one another and just stay to themselves more often. You mentioned having visitors to keep company, but in modern society, people need constant human interaction. On page 105, you quote, my nearest neighbor is a mile distant and no house is visible from any place but the hilltops within half a mile of my own. With this quote, you are explaining how far away you are from society, but we know you aren't lonely because you are comforted by your surroundings, as stated in the next sentence on page 105. I have my horizon bounded by woods all to myself. You also state on the same page, I have it as it were my own, sun and moon and stars, and a little world all to myself. You were able to find comfort in nature, and that is something which is becoming less and less common. There are less people who find solitude in modern society, and even less who can find comfort in it.
Yo, Henry, though some people may think that your ideas from your book Walden are outdated and not popular anymore, your ideas are pretty good. They work in modern times. What you said about stereotypes, it still holds up today. In your book Walden, you were talking to a lumberjack while at the time of writing the book, and he showed you that maybe all stereotypes aren't true. In your time, people that didn't go to college were generally thought of as uneducated and not having anything worthy to say. But you actually taking time to talk to this person made you realize that maybe not this stereotype isn't actually true. This lumberjack, what you said about him was, to a stranger he appeared to know nothing of things in general. Yeah, I sometimes saw in him a man who I had not seen before, and I did not know whether he was as wise as Shakespeare or as simply ignorant as a child. In your society and in your time period, people were thought that didn't go to college were thought of as just not having anything worthy to say. And he suggested that there might be men of genius in the lowest grades of life, however permanently humble and illiterate, who take their own view always, or do not pretend to see it all, who are as bottomless as Walden Pond itself, though dark and muddy. This means that these people have unexplored potential, and this is what you were trying to write. These people have unexplored potential, and they were not allowed to be educated because they came from poor families. And in our time, we have changed that. For example, now everyone can go to university. There are scholarships for college if you get good grades, and people will be thinking, well, they'll just let people from the rich families in. Well, no, there's something called affirmative action, that if it's for disadvantaged people like minorities, they haven't been thought of as to be as smart as white people for a long time, or for people that parents didn't go to college. Now they have a chance to go to college and make a better life for themselves and their future children. And programs such as STEM programs for girls, because girls and women for hundreds of years have been thought of to be inferior to men. But now they are in jobs to get them in their workforce, and now they make up a majority of the university classes. Your views are not outdated. They still work now.
Yo, Henry, welcome to 2019. About 200 years ago, you said that you thought stereotypes were starting to fade, but I gotta inform you that simply isn't true. See, you said he could defend many institutions better than any philosopher because, in describing them as they concern him, he gave the true reason for their prevalence, and speculation had not suggested to man any other. When you said this, you were talking about your woodchuck friend. You previously mentioned that he seemed dim-witted, but he was actually quite knowledgeable. Someone else saw the same man passing through town and said he could have been a king in disguise. You took this as a fact that stereotypes were dissipating, but they're still present. Recently, news anchor Laura Spencer had a small segment on Prince William's son George learning ballet. She was holding in laughter as she said Prince William says George absolutely loves ballet. I have news for you, Prince William. We'll see how long that lasts. She was implying that because George is a boy, that he won't enjoy it as he starts getting older. This is a perfect example of the stereotypes that boys don't like dance. You also say he suggested that there might be men of genius in the lowest grades of life, however permanently humble and illiterate, who take their own view always, or do not pretend to see it all, who are as bottomless even as Walden Pond was thought to be, though they may be dark and muddy. Here you are relaying what someone told you, in which people do not always conform to their surroundings, and that people's minds aren't influenced by where they reside. This is another point where you imply people are realizing stereotypes are not always true and they're fading away. But again, this isn't happening. Another very common stereotype now is that girls always have to look their best. This can be seen everywhere, especially on social media. Apps like Facetune were created so someone could edit out the parts of pictures they didn't like, just feeding the idea of perfect appearance. Sorry, Henry, but stereotypes are still very present in our world.
As you can see, Henry, there are multiple perspectives on whether your ideas still hold true today. Thanks for watching our video.